the opening. Early on, getting Magnus in these messy waters, is that the key here, David, to try and get those complicated positions as early and quickly as possible?
Yep, that is the key. And Wesley, he's happy to repeat the English opening. In the previous white game, he did get some chances there. That was also messy, imbalanced. And as you say, Tanya, that's exactly what he needs to aim for. It's first Magnus who does switch things up. No reverse Sicilian this time. Black cannot play the move e5, and therefore Magnus is forced into a different opening. From here, we could still see transpositions to the Queen's Gambit, the Queen's Indian, a whole bunch of systems. And okay, some mind games there, but it does look like it's surely going to transpose into the Queen's Gambit. Declined if Wesley picks up his d-pawn right now. But no, he plays a very flexible line of the Reti here. Yeah, it definitely feels like Wesley's trying to keep as much tension in the position, because that's what paid off in the previous battle, Simon.
Yeah, I like this move e3 actually, because he could have played the Queen's pawn forwards, played d4. One of the most well-known positions you'll get in chess, the main line Queen's Gambit. And Magnus knows those positions incredibly well, and they're kind of like quite hard. Whites find it hard to get an advantage in those positions, but this is a really flexible move. It's becoming a bit more trendy nowadays, and White keeps that tension. You can often get some very aggressive ideas. This move, the most testing move, White trying to push in the center, and now we often get an exchange, and we can go into the Tarish variation. It is quite likely to see here. Because Black has kind of got the positional threat of pushing the pawn in the center one square further forwards. And we saw this yesterday, didn't we? Wesley So had it with Black as well in that game. Well, this time he's got the white pieces, but you've got to stop that Black pawn coming as a square forwards generally here.
Yeah, you don't want the baloney.
You don't want the baloney.
The baloney structure. If Black gets d4 and pushes that knight, and then the knight comes to c6, it's a benoni. I apologize for the inside chess joke, but I want to say I like the Tarash from Magnus as a structure to go for when you only need a draw, because there's a very good chance we're going to get a bunch of exchanges in the center. Often White's best way to deal with d4 coming is to play d4 here, which opens up the door for a whole bunch of pawns to be traded. So, and Wesley, in fact, has done it. So it doesn't mean that we are in dead, drawn territory by any means. The position is equal. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of exchanges in the center, and that should help the person who's looking to simplify matters.
The fact that Wesley gets a game 4, that's already a huge achievement given the way the day started for him. Yeah. And now with the white pieces, he needs to find his chances. Magnus Carlsen is such a competitive player. David, you're good friends with Magnus. Give us a little insight into his mindset. What's it like when he's just lost a game?
It's just win, win, win. That's all he can think about. Revenge, revenge, revenge. The titles. He gets motivated, and he's a perfectionist as well. Danny was playing sport with him this morning, and I think any mistake that anyone made, Magnus had a comment. So it's it's very much kind of.
I appreciated the coaching, for the record. I wasn't. I mean, I was learning paddle for the first time, and I know Magnus is a super competitive guy. So the fact that we found our stride and won some games feels good. But yeah, he definitely lets you know every mistake you make.
So who won? Who won? Yeah, that's what we got now.
Magnus and I won 2 out of 3 sets.
Not bad.
Against David and Osklin.
Is Magnus a trash talker when he wins? Oh.
I don't know. These days it's more when he loses. Magnus, I mean, on the rare occasions. Then it gets, he's quite good at winning these days. He's more modest, and he's very graceful. He knows when players play well. Not that I played well in paddle, but like when his opponents play well in chess, he's great.
So he's not just competitive over the board. It's any sport.
Everything.
Translates. And I think it's true for all great sportsmen, right? Passion, the interest, and just the focus on winning. It shines through in anything they do. And meanwhile, a trade of pawns. And yeah, I was going to say, Magnus has experience in this position. I remember he beat me in a blitz game on chess.com here not that long ago. He beat Vincent Keimer, and I played this move. Magnus is going to push his c-pawn now to c4. There we go. I'm getting bad memories. If Magnus gets his bishop out to b4 now and trades off White's knight, he's got a fantastic score in this position. I'm surprised Wesley's going down this line.
Seems like you know this position, David. So you lost this position as White against Magnus, did you?
Against Magnus. I think it was on chess.com a few months ago. He just crushed me there.
Yeah, there's a danger here, isn't there, just with the pawn structure. I mean, Black's got the better pawn structure now, because that majority of the queen side can be really dangerous when they start moving down the board. So is it one of those positions where White needs to do something quite quickly, like move the knight into the middle trying to break, because if white plays too slowly, he can actually become worse here. Is that
I'll just
potential aim?
I'll just show Magnus's recipe for success here. You're talking about dropping the knight in the center. That's very logical. And actually, I think that's how our game went. And basically what happened is that Magnus simply took on this square. Let's show a few moves. I think he captured at this moment. It might have been in a few turns' time, but what he did was simply trade off this knight on e5. And even though these pieces disappeared, he was happy to just land his bishop on f5, controlling the open file, stopping white's rook from accessing b1. And the bishop always comes in. The rook always seems to get hold of the b file. And you know what happens next, Simon?
Yeah.
Harry starts marching down the board.
I think he beat Jordan van Foreest in the last Champions Tour with this exact position you might have here. I don't know if it was Jordan, but he won a very important game there. So he's got a lot of experience in this, which Wesley must know about, right? He must know that this is something Magnus does on a regular basis. So I would have thought he knows, because he it's preparation.
So I like what Wesley's done. He's prevented bishop takes c3 on black's terms, where white would have to capture back with the b pawn, and that structure we showed does certainly favor black. But yeah, meanwhile, I still like Magnus's chances very quickly.
Why never want to play f4 instead of taking on c6? Is the risk that the knight on f6 will move, and then when f6 comes, the e3 pawn is just too weak, so it's just a positional disaster to commit.
Yeah, possibly. If you could somehow maintain the knight on c3, I have a feeling that black's also going to just dominate the e4 square.
Okay.
And yeah, this bishop unfortunately will be left as a bad one in this pawn chain.
Inevitably, too, the whole point is that black will at some point be able to kick that knight from e5, and that e3 pawn will be spied on that open file. So f4 is a move that you often wish you could take back in some of these structures. In fact, you'd almost rather play for f3 and e4 if you can get away with that, even though it's slow. So this is, yeah, it's interesting, because everything about this structure, Simon highlighted well. If we want to highlight the three queenside pawns, a6, b7, c4, if you just split the board in half, black is basically just winning positionally, right? You've just won with that sort of, it's a pan-off bot bennett kind of reverse structure. And unless white can get e4 and or undermine the d5 pawn in a really powerful way, because if the d5 pawn falls, then the whole thing might collapse. If you can't break through with e4 or the d5 pawn, black is in a positionally just a very boa constrictor style position, similar to Magnus's style. So, yeah,
How would you define Wesley's style?
Oh man, how would I define Wesley's style?
In the general
chess.
word.
Accurate.
I would use words like technical. I would use words like accurate. I would say also not necessarily someone who plays slowly, but he's defensive minded, and that he's very forward thinking about stopping his opponent's threats. And I think when you combine that with also being a very accurate calculator, he doesn't miss his opportunities, and he doesn't give you many. So that's the thing. And so he's ruthless when he converts, and he usually doesn't beat himself. Again, a guy like Magnus finds ways to win against everybody. That's why he has a plus record against, I think, maybe every human being he's ever played. But overall, Wesley is actually a tough opponent for Magnus in a lot of ways. Wait, you have a plus record against Magnus?
I do, yeah.
Really?
Whoa.
Well, it's like what he said yesterday. He said you've got to beat them when they're young.
Yeah.
And I basically beat him when he can put his head above the table.
Okay,
So,
I didn't know that.
He was, I think he was like 25-80 when I played him.
Okay.
Gal's still win
2005,
sometimes. So, yeah, and luckily I've never played him again since then. So I got the one lucky game. But he was very young.
Amazing.
So, yeah, a little kid. Still a very good little kid, but he wasn't hardly as strong as he is now. But still, I got a plus score. That's all that counts, isn't it?
I was
awesome.
obviously kind of saying it in jest. There's probably a few other people out there who have a plus score against Magnus, but that's phenomenal. I'm sitting next to a legend right here.
That's you should know that by now, Danny. You know, so, but I mean, I think winning one game when he's a baby doesn't really count, but it's still nice to have.
25-80. That's not a baby. That's still a monster on the board.
Well, with Magnus, he actually was born 2580. That's a fun thing about Magnus's history.
That's it. He came out.
He came out of the womb plus 2500.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
One more player comes to my mind who might have a plus score against him in classical. I think Nodebek Abdusatov. Because I think they've only played once in Tata Steel earlier this year in Waikanzer, and Abdusatov won that game.
Yeah, you're in a very elite club there, Simon. And I've got to say, go check out that game, everyone. He pushed Harry the H pawn. It was beautiful. Beautiful win. He's too modest to say it.
It was a long time ago, but it was it's obviously nice to have that. But you just got to beat them when they're young. This is the key. And it's like all these Indian players, just try to beat them when they're like still babies, because you won't get any chance later on in their career.
By the way, we've had a big transition here. We had en passant, which for the chat, they love that. The en passant lives in chat. But if we want to back up real quick, David, just to show that Wesley was not going to let Magnus get a bind on the queen side, so he struck with b4, which pretty much forces en passant because you don't want that structure to let white get going. But now, Magnus after the exchange already goes for the king side. Harry is
he's coming.
He's getting involved. Harry's coming.
Love it. I mean, this is the way to do it, right, David? Throw the pawn.
Yeah, the signal is that the white king has no knights around, no great defenders, so this pawn is going to act as a battering ram, might even just sit on the h3 square, and white's king side is going to be vulnerable long term. Yeah, this one heating up.
Heating up sounds like a race with Magnus heading for Wesley's king, but Wesley's got weaknesses of Magnus to attack on the queen side there. Who gets there first? Wesley in a must-win situation, and of course, there is a big battle on in Division 2 as well, with Danlas and Samam fighting for that top spot. And we're checking in with Ketty, who's got an update for us.
That's right, Tanya. We do have the final game started. Armageddon just started. Semyon wins the bidding with 10 seconds only. So he beat 9 minutes and 49 seconds. Lazovic beat 9 minutes and 59 seconds. So that means that Lazovic is now with white pieces in must-win situation, where Semyon needs just win or a draw to win the second division and to get the seat in the first division. And Tanya, also, we have a news, big winner in the Division 3, Yu Yangyi, Grandmaster from China. He convincingly wins the tournament and $5,000 USA dollars.
Wow, congratulations to Yu Yangyi there. Ketty, I've got to ask you, that big Armageddon coming up with so much on the line for these players. Denislas winning the bid with 10 seconds. How much of a psychological win is that for him?
Right. Well, he was yesterday the one who won the bid. Today he lost the bid. So I think it's a little bit pressure on him. I saw him also not leaving the chair while they had break. So I think he was just preparing for the game. It's a lot of tension on the in this board. I can see that, and I can feel that also on the game.
It is going to be a big fight in the Armageddon. Ketty, do you have any predictions of who might win Division 2?
I have no idea, Tanya. I usually like the black side in Armageddon, so I would just say maybe Soviet has a good chances. But we have Denis Lazovic, who had such an incredible game, and like it's so good to see so young player playing in the first division for the first time ever in the Champions Chess Tour.
That's awesome. It's such a big fight between these two prodigies. And Ketty, thank you for that. We will check in with you on what happened in this big Armageddon and who books his spot into Division 1 of the next Champions Chess Tour event. Meanwhile, big action here. Harry, the H-pawn, has arrived.
All the way to H3. Harry's gone full Alpha Zero. You go full Alpha Zero all the way on H3 means that you have these long-term mating net chances, and the white king will never be safe again after you establish a thorn like that. So anyway, but Magnus also still seems to be playing in a bit of his comfort zone, right? He doesn't have time like he did in game 1, where he had more time than he started with. But he's got a lot of time here, David, and I don't know what you know about how comfortable he is here. You shared that you've lost positions like this on the white side to him, but feels like he really has a good sense and an understanding for the structure.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can also cut the board in half, as you did earlier, Danny, and this time, white has the advantage on the queen side because black has a backward pawn on e6. So that's the only thing I think might make Magnus uncomfortable. He doesn't like having these long-term structural deficiencies in his positions, but he does have a clear target, the white king, and he has totally immobilized now white's light squared bishop in the corner. We've been talking about that piece a lot in the dragon setups, in the Catalan opening we talked about from earlier. But that white light squared bishop on h1, it's the only defender, but it can never move. So despite Wesley maybe having the advantage on the queen side, his pieces might be caught on the wrong side of the board later. I still see Magnus being extremely happy with his chances.
Yeah, I mean, it's always easier to attack your opponent's king than to attack the queen side. It's as simple as that, and it's always more fun because if you land your attack on the king side, you checkmate, right? If you land your attack on the queen side, you might win a pawn or two, but it's not the end of the world. I suppose the hope is, though, that Wesley can just defend and get this pressure on the queen side, before Magnus lands a big blow. Magnus's plan, I think, is quite simple, though, right? He just wants to exchange off at some point the light square bishops and put his queen on g2, checkmate. It's the kind of plan I like.
You're just so biased toward checkmate attacks. You just described like a positional queenside attack like it's like not a good idea because you just always want to checkmate.
Well, yeah, that's
You always got
isn't that
me.
right? But isn't it more fun to attack on the king side?
I
than the
mean,
queen
yeah, it is
side?
more fun to attack on the king side, but you also have to be able to attack positionally. And we should highlight that the c6 pawn is a massive positional weakness because I think that it actually will end up proving Simon's point in the end. But I'm looking at this line where like we play like knight a4. This is the most logical thing to do for white in these positions, and I assume we get a trade on d2. And the point is, I think black's plan here is rather than try to defend the weakness passively and allow white to start to get surgical over there because the queen comes to b4, the knight comes to c5, instead you just go all in for this, like knight e4, right? And you try to get an exchange of the bishop for the knight and sacrifice the pawn, and then you're going to bring the queen out and try to checkmate on the light squares,
Well, that's what I was showing, Danny, yeah?
Maybe. David's showing it. But yeah, no, exactly. So I think that this is, but again, with best play, this may not work. So my point is I'm both validating your feelings, which is what a good partner does. I'm validating you, but also sharing how I feel about the position too. Okay, which is that white also has a positional attack on the queen side. Can you validate back?
Yeah. White's doing very well on the queen side. Some good pressure there. I see the c6 pawn has gone, but checkmate ends the game.
Checkmate just end the game.
It does. It's rule number one. Checkmate ends the game. No, I am always biased with the king side attack. It's a weakness of what I got. A very interesting move on the board, but it just I mean, you've got to go for the c6 pawn. It's going to be a bit of a race, right? I mean, if white does land on the queen side, as Danny was saying, it's very possible. Then white could be doing extremely well here. Race. It's just a race, right?
Yeah, pure race. And interesting move for Wesley. In terms of a race, it doesn't look like having a knight back on its start square on b1 is going to help at all. Obviously, the idea is to recapture on the d2 square with the knight, bring the white knight slightly closer to the white king. But Magnus says, no, okay, this time, no trade for you. You can take a pawn, but I think this is just going to accelerate black's attack. I'm not sure exactly how to do this, but for example, the rook can start coming, the knight's going to land into the center next move. Suddenly these pieces, I'm looking at them, they're fast asleep, and I don't think white's got the defensive resources here.
Fisher random striking again for Wesley, so he loves putting his pieces on awkward squares. So anyway, it might backfire here.
He plays bishop b4, but already that idea you mentioned, Danny, is coming in, and yeah, I fear for white. His whole idea, Wesley here, is to bring his knight closer, but I'm not sure he's quick enough. Big moves ahead. Magnus up on the clock.
The pressure is on, and Magnus with the black pieces going for Wesley's king. And also in these rapid formats, it's just so difficult to defend these kind of positions with white. Wesley under 6 minutes right now. He hasn't taken the c6 pawn, as you were pointing out. It was too dangerous. Instead, he moves the bishop, vacating some squares for the knight to come into defense. How difficult is this going to be for Wesley when it goes down to seconds, handling this attack on the king side?
I think it's a great point. The aggression against someone's king is even more effective in fast time controls. As much as I'm just proving your point over here. But yeah, no, playing an aggressive position, defending against an aggressive attack is even harder when you don't have a lot of time on the clock. So, by the way, and bishop b4 makes it even harder to take c6 because now rook c8 is devastating because that rook on c1 isn't defended. So this is, the eval is starting to like Magnus's position more. The clock says that we like his position, so I don't see what the best move is here for black. I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe it is just knight e4 like we've been kind of shooting for. But
yeah, I think knight e4 looks very natural. I would also make an argument maybe for that rook lift, just bringing black's rook to e6, just defending the c6 pawn. But yeah, I've been looking at some cool tactics here, and I think Wesley's in big trouble if Magnus does land his knight on e4. I don't think Wesley's in time then to bring his knight in. Magnus is calculating.
Is that his calculating pose, David?
that's his. He's also nursing an injury from paddle. He's got his hand on the right shoulder. He's just kind of holding on to it from this morning.
It's a body language thing. It's comforting. He's comforting himself. He's regulating.
He goes
He's trying to steal my job, David. the body expert over here.
Okay, but he goes 94. Is there F? We gotta start showing some of this because the moves on the board are critical for the story that's taking place here, because Magnus is either about to launch a devastating attack on the light squares or Wesley's going to find a brilliant defense. And is F3, why is F3 just not possible here? It forks the bishop and knight.
Yeah.
So we should show it.
double attack. And I think, well, you can't save both pieces. One of them will drop, so I think you have to counterattack here. For example, let's threaten
very
to
nice.
come in with the black queen. And it's not easy to defend this pawn, actually. I'm not sure how to defend it.
But if I play like queen d3, I'm just trying to make a move that then makes you deal with the fork. Now it's like knight g3 and rook e3.
Ooh, nice
I guess.
spot, Danny.
Okay, yeah, that looks like it.
Problem is, this bishop, as soon as it gives a check, it's going to be deadly. And suddenly the position is falling apart. You're giving up a piece for a few pawns, but white's king lacking defenders. And this one we can calculate further. It's probably what the players are looking at, this type of thing. And yeah, f3 is the critical move. I was going to say as well, you cannot play the move knight to d2 to trade off this beast, because suddenly another sacrifice, I think.
Wow.
And here, for example, is there simply a check maybe?
Lovely.
I mean, this just looks deadly. Like, I have a feeling there's going to be some tactics on this square. Although, wow.
Big decision.
Big decision. He's not gone for this. This is dangerous for black. The evaluation bar says is winning, although complicated. Instead, Wesley decided, let's backpedal. Bishop takes knight instead, giving up that beautiful bishop. We've been talking about it a lot today. But he's hoping that black cannot break through on the light squares. Problem is, are you going to be able to stop this idea forever? For now, white's knight holding that square feels really flimsy to me.
I think you're highlighting the right point, is that now your light square problems are forever. Right? When you give up the light square bishop, that pawn on h3, that bishop on g4, those squares, g2 and f3, they're not going anywhere. Grab a Snickers. We're going to be here for a while.
It's very hard for white to get counterplay now, I think. I mean, because that knight really wants to do something on the queen side. I don't think you can really move your dark square bishop, because bishop a5. You know, if black can swap off his dark square bishop for that defender,
Love it.
it's going to be horrible. So what can white actually do? So it's not just what black can do. White is actually struggling to find a plan here after, you know, some queen f6 move like that, you know, and I guess black can build up somehow. I'm not sure how, but you can get all your pieces in the right area, and it just looks like something will give at some point.
And for Wesley, his only hope is trying to get those pawns on the queen side, the c6 weakness and the a6 weakness. This last move by Wesley also hints at a potential queen coming to the defense of the light square by falling back next to that king. But right now, everything guarded. Magnus cannot penetrate with that queen into those light squares, which is absolutely key in the position. But he needs only a draw here to win the match.
Yeah.
And he's the one who's pushing. That's big pressure on Wesley with 3 minutes on the clock.
It's a great point. I feel like I almost forgot, because Wesley won a game, that Magnus is still in half a point territory to win the whole thing. Because you're right that it kind of adds to the point that black can almost sit on this position, right? Because the white knight can't move, or we're going to lose on the light squares. It's hard to get more pressure against that c6 pawn. The one other trump card is that the queen on f1 can both defend and spy a6, so that's helpful. Right, there's some chances there, but yeah, this looks really, really tough for Wesley. How can he create chances before he runs out of time?
And remember, I mean, we've been talking about checkmate. Wesley needs to win this. So even if Magnus just sits, and even if there is no breakthrough for black, it's hard to imagine any way to do anything, as you said, Simon. He's called up and prevent a checkmate, but that's the very maximum.
I think if anyone can improve their position, it's going to be black here. I mean, black can sneak that light square bishop into d3, improve the rooks, just keep the pressure on white's position. What can white do? I'm just struggling to find a plan for white. I mean, does white have to push his kingside pawns? No, I can't do that. I can't see anything at all that white can do here. Let's say I go king h8, king g8 forever. Let's just say I have, you know, I literally just play that forever. What are you going to do? You know, that'd be a very funny way of just asking your opponent.
There is like rook c2 to double rooks, although even if I double rooks, I don't know what I'm doing. You're already guarding the pawn.
It might be time to start looking at Wesley wanting to push that a pawn ahead. You get Harry the h pawn moving. Maybe Wesley goes with Harry the a pawn.
Maybe Harry, because that does stop this bishop a5 idea, and you can use your dark square bishop. That is a good plan. Yeah. Definitely. Well spotted there, Tanya. And I think this is one of the only things I can see. So I think you've got to stop the black bishop having the opportunity to come there in the position. I mean, as black here, I'd be very tempted to put my bishop on g5 and just sack it on e3 at some point. You know, something like this must give eventually, I feel.
Always looking for checkmate, Simon.
You know, it's, you know.
Even if it takes 20 moves.
You know, how you win at chess, isn't it? That's what I've thought.
Magnus there, going into a bit of a think. I think it's the same thing. He knows he set up this beautiful position. Everything looks stunning right now. Right pieces at the right place. But what's next?
Yeah.
And he's also trying to find that finishing blow, Simon. And it's not that easy to really spot. How do you improve from here?
Right. Does he win the NFT as well for winning this?
Who?
Magnus, or is it? Just wondering. Yeah.
You jealous, Simon?
Yeah, the position's very interesting. And, yeah, no, I don't have any NFTs. Too complicated for me.
But Simon, you will be jealous to know that the fan who gets the NFT also gets a VIP ticket to Toronto.
Very jealous of that. Extremely jealous. I'd love to be there
Adam.
in Toronto. And actually, you know, maybe I should start collecting these things. You know, he's gone back with the rook. Why has he gone back?
Well, I think I want to share this line because out of curiosity and frustration, I did the rare thing. I did actually turn on the lines, not just the eval bar, to see, because I wanted to see what could Wesley do. And if we want to go back to that position, David, it actually proves the point with rook e8. This shows how tough White's position is, because the engine's best line here is black plays like queen g5, and white plays bishop c5, and then black plays bishop a5, and white plays bishop b4, and black can play bishop at b6, and white has to play like the engine is suggesting that white try to go for a draw, right? And then it says here, like, if black wants to play on, it can play bishop to d8, right? There's also queen h5 ideas that suggest, which is really nice to show because you're going to e2 to kick the queen and some mating net ideas. But the point is, the engine's best line here was to hope that white could like repeat, which isn't even an option for Wesley. So if we go back to the live game after rook e8, okay, Magnus goes for a plan where he does have an idea. I think he wants to play a5 at some point and kick that bishop, maybe even a5 and a4, right, to create a new line in. He's playing principle of two weaknesses in the middle game, right, using the queen side and the light squares. But it just shows you, look, Wesley played bishop c5. What do you do on bishop a5 besides go back to b4?
Yeah, and then if Magnus repeats, Wesley can't repeat.
So I think it was instructive, yeah.
He's got to find another plan. And it's some amazing full board awareness there by Magnus when he transferred that rook from e6 to the other side of the board.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And by the way, I don't think we're going to see anything but bishop b4 here by Wesley. And it's kind of funny. I pulled up that engine line because we're probably going to see it. I think Wesley's going to play bishop b4. And Magnus is going to go back to, yep, here it is. Magnus is going to go back to b6, and Wesley's going to look himself in the mirror and be like, do I want to play on, or am I taking a draw because I'm worse? He has to play on.
He has to play on.
I mean, even if he's going to lose, you might as well lose, right? But you might as well go down in a flame of glory than just a wet puddle. I don't know. A wet puddle, I said.
Is that like, because you like cry yourself? What was that? Like you cry yourself?
Just like, you know, a bit wet, you know, like
are you peeing yourself? Like, can I say that? I mean, why are you sitting in a wet puddle? I don't get it.
I don't know, you know, just thinking wet puddles. You know? I don't know, wet puddles. You know, like the wet handshake, you know, you must get this. When you play a game of chess, it's nice to get a firm handshake before the game, but if someone goes like that, that's a wet handshake. Do you know what it is? It's wet, you know, it's like, give me a proper handshake. Don't give me the wet fish. You know, like, what is that? Should we go back to the game?
Yeah. It's a great time to go back in the game because we were talking about how is Wesley not going to repeat, but Magnus is the one who refuses the repetition and actually falls back with the bishop.
Yeah, really principled. He's opened up the B file for the black rook. A5 is coming. If all the rooks disappear, white has close to 0 winning chances there as well. So, yeah, multiple choices here for Magnus. Of course, if Wesley brings his bishop back, then we'll see that repetition, that dance of bishops and a draw. But okay, he has to drop it back to a really ugly passive square instead, just to prevent black start square bishop from getting active. And I think Magnus is kind of bullying Wesley in a way. He's saying, okay, I know your best moves are just to repeat. You have to play worse moves. You're only going to help me in your quest to try and win this one. Yeah,
But it is impressive because he could have played bishop e6 and made Wesley make a move that also would have been bad. But like you said, it was principled. He believed in his idea of relocating the rook to the b file, and he's gonna show it, right? And he obviously knew Wesley wouldn't repeat, so he's like, I'm not even gonna play these games. I believe in my plan. Let's go. Now you're gonna get under a minute.
Yeah, and reaching that 1 minute mark. Meanwhile, looking at Magnus, is he heading towards the teapot situation?
Wow,
Simon.
look at that.
The teapot, the wet puddle, it's all coming out today. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Here we go. This is where it could get interesting. So I think Wesley has to try something like this, which is going to create some weaknesses, but you need to plug those light squares as well. And the question is now, if the bishop attacks white's rook, can white try to get his queen in? I think that's what he's trying to do. And that's why Magnus moved that pawn, because he didn't want to lose that pawn. And only active thing I can see. Or is it G4? You're going to grab Harry?
Wow.
Poor old Harry? I mean, I don't know if I believe that either, but you've got to try something. You've got to try to complicate this position. And they're both getting lower time. It's going to, this is getting very critical. Magnus can still make mistakes, right? It's still a very tense situation here.
Yeah, we see the eval bar and we see that black is doing great, but anything could still happen here.
And I just want to point out, David, with that last move, white has created more weaknesses on the king side. So now you say A, you got to see B. And when I say B, I mean you have to go E4. Otherwise, there was this threat of the queen falling back with a potential double attack on E3 and A3. And you might end up losing one of the 2 pawns if you get greedy. So he does go with E4, but that's playing with fire because you strike in the center when your king isn't that safe.
Yeah, the more the position becomes open, now you start looking at that dark square diagonal from G1 to A7. So there's new ways, not just the light squares. Magnus calmly retreats the bishop to E6. And you just say, come on, keep pushing your pawns and opening up new ways for me to get at your king. And Wesley's going to oblige because he doesn't have anything else to do. But yeah, we're liking black's chances.
Yeah, Tanya, I think your move might happen on the board. And suddenly black switches focus to the queen side. There we go. Magnus plays it. And yeah, this pawn push has gained Wesley space, but you don't want space here. It's just left those loose squares behind. And ugly move. Rook to A1, ceding the B file. And this is really, wow, inviting a break as well. Magnus is opening things for those bishops.
How incredible has it been that Magnus starts with his king side attack, putting all his forces on the king side, and then suddenly switches to the other side of the board, and Wesley sort of trying to now fight the downfall on the queen side.
Me and Simon are playing together now. We did the king side attack, and now we're doing the queen side. We're the same, me and you.
We're moving over now.
We're doing it. We're doing it together, man.
I did think it'd be checkmate by now, I have to say.
But it's okay if we win my position away. We went for the attack, and now positionally, we got a protected pass pawn. Everything's going to work out.
Looks good. Yeah, it works for both of us. We're
both
both happy.
for both of us. We're both happy.
Perfect day. And it still looks great for Magnus with that pawn, but it's still not clear. Still not 100% clear. And they're both now well in time trouble. They're under a minute. You can blunder. You can blunder in this scenario.
I love that move though, because he's trying. Again, now he's back to the king side. He's playing on both sides of the board here, right? He's going to force open the diagonal. I love black's position. I think Wesley's a move away from blundering. A3 is also under the gaze of the queen.
Ben Feingold would not approve, but F6 that time did look very strong. It's opened things up, and wow, Magnus is forcing the queens off. Not what we expected, but looks like just a good way to cement the advantage. Black's central pawns are both pass pawns, and once the queen disappears for white, the black rook has got full access on the B file. Also, look at that white king. This is the Alpha Zero style. It's not even to checkmate putting the black pawn on H3.
Yep.
It's in order to make sure in any endgames you paralyze the opponent's king. Really nice.
Magnus put his head in hand and kind of shook, but I'm not sure why, because now Wesley's by
6
5 seconds. It looks great.
Has to make a move. He trades the queens. At least not getting checkmated now. Wow.
I mean, maybe not. The pawn on H3, though, is still pretty dangerous. So,
and the central pawns. Let's not forget them. Once they start moving, and there it is.
Pawns are rolling, and white's knight can take one of those pawns, but you walk into a pin. This looks deadly. Black's rooks now are going to line up. Black's central pawn's going to harass this white rook. I think black is just about to win a piece. This could be the last few moves of the Aimchess Rapid.
And he wins a piece. The pawn on D3 is going to queen.
Got back
the checkmating, it's on the board, Simon.
Oh, there we go.
Oh my God, and we have a winner. Magnus Carlsen checkmates Wesley and wins the Aimchess Rapid.